Today I have a guest who's going to talk about their experiences with the little people. Okay, so now we can actually see you, Wendy.
Okay.
And
Hello.
your daughter.
I'm Alex.
Alex and Wendy? Okay. So you guys want to give a little brief introduction on yourselves?
You go ahead.
Okay, well, my name is Wendy Ponca, and I'm Osage Indian, and we live here on the Osage Nation Reservation in Oklahoma. And we're from the Gray Horse Camp, and I guess we're going to talk to you a little bit about our little people. And
I'm Alex Ponca Stock, and I'm Wendy's daughter. And I had an experience as a kid at our house about 8 miles west of Fairfax in Oklahoma. Growing up, so I'm just going to tell you the story about that. That's all. That's what I know. And
Okay.
then plus she's told me, which she'll be able to give you background on that.
All right. I'd like to hear that. So what happened with your little person encounter?
Okay, so you want to just start out, or
you go ahead.
well, I don't know. It might be better to have some kind of background.
Should I?
You guys
think
want to
you
do a little
should.
background on the little people first? That'd be good. Tell us what your culture knows about them.
Yeah, just maybe.
Okay, well, all of my life growing up, I've been told by my elders about the little people. We totally believe in them, and the name that we have for them is Miloshka. And even saying that name, people are very hesitant to even say that word because they're afraid that the little people will come around when you even just say that word. So a lot of people won't even, and they've even made up crazy names to call them, like Marijuanskis and stuff like that, so they don't have to say the word in Osage because they're that afraid of it, you know. And but growing up, I was told stories about them being basically good and sometimes bad, you know, like tricksters. And I remember one really important story that I was told about this woman that lived out at our Camp Gray Horse, where we have our traditional dances. It's not powwows, it's traditional dances. And this woman that was living out there with her family, she was deaf and dumb, and one time she was missing for 2 whole weeks, and of course the family was very, very upset. This was in the 1940s, and when she came back, she was healthy and everything was fine with her. And her mother spoke with like a sign language that they had made up between themselves. And her mother asked her where she'd been. And she said that she had been with the little people, living out with the little people, and they had taken care of her. They live up in the trees here. And we also used to have a dance with them once a year in the summertime, and a dance and feast, much like our traditional dances now. And but turn of the last century, we gave up that dance because we gave up our religion completely due to the fact that 90% of our tribe was decimated from smallpox in the 1880s. Before we moved from Kansas down to Oklahoma, from our original homelands were here, but also in Missouri and Kansas and Arkansas, and but now we're on our land that we are currently on now in Oklahoma, which is a reservation. And so we stopped doing those ceremonies with them, and so since then, people are, you know, they just don't even want to talk about it because we'd given up our old religion and all of that went with it. So I think that's a lot of the stigma attached.
You guys were friends with them before the transition to a new religion?
Yeah, as much as you could be, but just like being with another group of people, just like we were with different tribal people and things like that. But
Not necessarily friends, but showed respect, I would think.
But
like,
you guys hung out, like dances, right? It's like hanging out.
to appease them so they wouldn't mess with us because they were tricksters.
almost like the UN summit has. I mean, how much are we friends with like the different countries?
But,
you know, I think it was.
Would the little people be at the dances, or?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so they're like part of it.
Yes.
You guys weren't like just like doing a dance to the gods and like nothing was really
No.
there. Like that's what I wanted to differentiate for everyone. You know what I mean? So you're physically with them and doing the ceremony with them.
Yes, and the reason why I want to let you know that is a fact is that in the 1970s, a cousin of mine, he was at a powwow in Tulsa, Oklahoma, at a park which is there called Mohawk Park, and every year there's a dance there and a powwow, intertribal powwow. And in the 1976, this cousin of mine was there, and he was national champion fancy dancer. I'm not going to say his name, but people will figure out who it is. But he got done dancing, and he changed out of his traditional clothes, and he was walking to go visit some friends in another part of the park. It's a large park in Tulsa, Mohawk Park. And he was coming over a little rise, and he noticed in a clearing there that he thought there was a lot of children there, out in the clearing dancing. And he thought, wow, this is really cool. So he went down there, and when he saw them, it was all like about 20 to 30 Miloshkas having a dance. And he was like amazed. He watched them for a little while, and then he went back and told his father and all of his relatives. They're all my relatives as well. And they were so flipped out that he saw so many of them there at that dance that they immediately, this is like on a Saturday night, they immediately had a peyote meeting for him, American Indian Church meeting for him the next day, which disrupted the whole dance that was going on. He couldn't dance or anything go on with the powwow or anything like that because they felt that they were so worried for him that he had witnessed so many Miloshkas, at this day and age that he would lose his mind. And so they had that peyote meeting for him, and he's still alive to this day. He's 60 years old, and he's been very recluse since then, all of his life, and he wasn't before, but thank God he's still alive, But other people that have seen him have their lives aren't like, as you would quote unquote say, the norm in the society that we live in now. Colonialist society.
Is it because it blows their mind or what?
Yes.
Okay,
literally.
so they're just like when they're never the same. Like holy
Exactly.
crap! So it's like PTSD.
I think,
but more that it's more spiritual.
I think you hear that a lot with people who see Bigfoot or see a UFO or something. I mean, you hear that a lot.
Or Dear Lady.
It breaks down what you assume or what you're indoctrinated in believing is like true and right in front of you, and you realize, okay, there's a lot more to this that I'm not necessarily being taught. And like, for instance, like in our tribe, like back in the day, well, we would have known, okay, that's part of life, because of our dances and things and our interactions with them. But now, because this society has its own myths and its own, I guess I think like a real inclination toward saying that science is the only truth. Science, which is whatever
what's known. That's what they don't like to. Anything that we don't understand, they don't like to think about.
Yeah, and so I think when people are exposed then to something that maybe is next to or even opposed to that, then people, I think they have a hard time then working within this society,
Mm-hmm.
because you know that that's not everything that you're being told every day. This is it. You know that that's not true.
So it's not like some magic that makes people go insane. It's just because it blows like they can't accept reality or that they're actually real. So
exactly.
What do they look like according to your culture and your people?
Just small humanoids. Nothing different. They
about 3 feet tall or so. I mean, that's what I've heard. That's not what I saw.
What did you see? Can you tell me your story now?
Yeah, well, so when I was a kid growing up, just knowing that it wasn't, I think I automatically had a distrust of authority and what people were telling me, not only because I grew up with artists who were always telling me to think outside the box, but also because being American Indian and going to school and hearing like, okay, this is the history of our country, and knowing from personal experience, okay, that's not true, so I was immediately questioned what I was impressed upon was reality. So as a kid, my cousin and I, we were really interested in like fairies and little people, you know, our tribal little people and stuff. And we weren't afraid of it. We were more interested. Kids are, you know, they're always more open. I think we had a lot of ghost experiences, a lot of stuff like that. And so we would go out into the woods, and there was a specific tree that we would go and leave treats, leave food and things for the little people. We wanted to see them. We were for, you know, for better or for worse, we were inviting them in. And then I had cats that I would let come in and out of my room was on the top floor of our house. We have a 2-story house, and I would leave the window open so my cats could come in and out. And I would put little like chocolates and milk and stuff out on the windowsill, not for the cats, but for the little people. My cousin and I would do little ceremonies and stuff. I mean, we were just naive. We just didn't know. We wanted to solidify or to have kind of confirmation of this feeling within us that there was something more, you know? And so one night after we had been doing that, probably pretty like, we'd been doing it pretty regularly, maybe for like a month or two. And I was sleeping in we have like a small room and then one major big room on the second floor of our house. And I was sleeping in the small room, and the door was cracked. The lights were out, but the door was cracked, and there was a light on in the other room. And I had the feeling like when you know that somebody's close to you, but you're still sleeping, but you know somebody's there. So you like kind of like you're aware that somebody's watching you. So I woke up with that kind of like dis-ease, and I was lying on my side, and in front of me was a silhouette of I would say about 1.5 feet, a silhouette of an animal, whatever. I didn't know what it was. For all I knew, it was an animal, but just to wake up with something, and it was right in front of my face and looking at me while I was sleeping. So I immediately, you know, when you wake up and something's next to you, especially if you think it's an animal or whatever, I screamed and I jumped back. And that's when I recognized it ran to the end of the bed, and it jumped down and ran into the other room through the crack in the door because the light was streaming through, and it was running on 2 legs. And so I knew at that point, what I had seen was this little person. And I waited, and I was just terrified, you know. I don't know if I would have been able to move, but I knew that my cousin had been in the other room earlier, and I began to feel scared for her, that I didn't know what had gone in that room and if she was still in there, you know. So I gathered my courage, and I went out, and she wasn't in there anymore. And I ran downstairs, and I was about 16 at this point, maybe 15, 14, around that age. But I was old enough that, like, you know, I didn't sleep with my parents anymore. Like, that was like, I was an independent being, you know. And after that happened, I refused to, she can attest to this, I refused to go back up into my room for a week at least, and I wouldn't sleep in there. And finally it got to the point where it was getting dysfunctional, and another cousin of mine, he was talking to me about it because it was like, you know, it was a serious thing. It was like either I was having a mental break or there was something really there that needed to be addressed. And so he said, okay, Alex, we're going to go upstairs, because I wouldn't even go up into my room to get my clothes or anything, you know. He said, okay, Alex, we're going to go up there and face your fear, whatever it is, you know. And this was like, you know, a week later, and it was around dusk time, so the light was just so that we walked upstairs into the room, and he was trying to basically, I think, just use psychology to be like, face your fear, it's nothing. Maybe it was a cat, you know. My mom said, like, maybe it was a cat that came in, maybe it was a raccoon, who knows, you know. And I knew that I had seen it run on 2 legs, so that didn't line up for me. And I was starting to get angry, like people weren't listening to me, you know, that I'd really seen something, and people weren't believing me. Well, at that point, we went upstairs, and my cousin and I were like standing in the room, and the light was just such at like dusk, that real like kind of rosy, like beautiful kind of warm light. And so you could see on the windows, because we had screens on them, you could see where the dust had gathered on the screens. It must not have rained for a while. And so you could see the dust on the screens, and all over the screens were hundreds of little handprints about that big, all over the screens.
I saw them as
of
well.
The windows. And then after that, my cousin, he said, okay, you really saw something. And he got her and brought her up to see, because I think they thought it was an animal, that I was overreacting, And so then after, what?
A pic of the handprints?
Oh no,
No.
we didn't. This was back behind. This was before we had like cell phones, and all that stuff. I'm 31 years old, about to be 32 years old. This was before. Otherwise, we would have, of course, like documented, but we didn't. And also, there's so many things that you see out here that you talk to a lot of people, and they'll see a lot of stuff, and it's like people don't even document it because it's just kind of like, it happens all the time.
That's how it is in the villages here too.
I saw the handprints, and they were legit. They
How
were
big?
not.
They were about this big,
No,
like,
hold your hand out and show me compared to your hand.
like
Like your palm?
a toddlers, But we hadn't had any kids also to.
This is second story. Nobody's going to be up there on the second story.
And we
have dogs, everything. Dogs don't let animals around the house at all.
And they were like human handprints,
Yeah.
And hundreds of them on the windows. So
That's
after
awesome.
that, I was pretty well done with my experimentation with that. It really scared me a lot, and I didn't really think about it for a long time. Then about 3 years later, I went to go live with my aunt in New Mexico. This is the only other connection to that I had. I was going to graduate from high school, and I went to go live my last year to go to art classes in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And when I got there, my aunt said, now she told me this later, but I didn't ever realize this. She said, I think you brought something with you when you came over here. And one night I had this dream that there was a camp of little people next to her house in Santa Fe, and I was taking bowls of water to them as like an offering because I was scared. I remember in the dream I was like scared, and I was like trying to make sure everything was okay because I knew that it was serious that they were there, and it was kind of a disturbing dream. And then, and I didn't think anything of it. I just thought it was like a dream. So I went to school that day, and this was about 3 years after that incident in my room. And when I came home that night, my aunt and her friends were kind of, they were kind of like perturbed. And I was like, what's going on? And they were like, Alex, did you, look at this, what we just found. So she had this big, like, kind of modernist table. It's like giant, all glass table made of all glass, and the whole top part of it. And we had no kids or anything in our group of people. It was just me and my aunt and her friends who were all like 40s and above. And she and her friends had just noticed very kind of disturbingly that on this big glass table, which was kept very clean because it's, a piece of glass, you want to make it look nice and everything, that there was one little tiny, just out of nowhere suddenly, this tiny handprint that had appeared on the glass table. And she and her friends had thought that was like very strange. They were like, oh, Alex, look at this handprint. Isn't that wild? Where did that come from? Nobody had any kids around. What's going on? And I didn't even think twice about that dream I had. But then as soon as that was the next day that I came home, and that handprint was on that table. And then I was like, oh my God, I just had this dream that they were here, that they were right outside camping. They had a camp, and I was taking them water in a bowl. And then my aunt told me, well, when you moved here, I felt like you brought something with you. So you see my reticence in even really talking about it, because I don't even necessarily talk about this anymore, because I had pursued them, and then I think they followed me for years, maybe even, so.
What did they look like? You said they didn't look like normal people.
Well, no, what was different for me was that they were smaller. A lot of people I've heard stories of them being about 3 foot, 4 foot tall. And the thing that I saw in my bed was about maybe 1.5 feet, 2 feet.
You didn't see any features for it?
The one on my bed, no, I didn't. It was a silhouette. It was
What
still
about the
dark,
dream?
backlit. But in the dream, they were kind of. I mean, I think they were just in traditional dress, maybe just like pants and shirts and stuff. But it wasn't like, it was more of a presence than of really seeing them, you know. So I don't know. I knew that they were there, and so that's all. That's my experience with them. I have chills just talking about it. It's like creepy.
So were their hands proportionally, were they dainty and delicate, or thick and muscular, or what kind of handprint?
It looked like a toddler handprint. Like if you saw a little kid, I have nephews, you know, it looked like a toddler, just normal, but miniature. But
kind of stubby,
yeah.
Like a toddler.
Yeah,
Okay.
just like a. I mean, I never. If you think, yeah, definitely. And when I saw them, like the proportions of the body, like when I saw that silhouette of that thing going, it looked just like a person, but just small. I mean, not
cool.
not like a baby or something.
Yeah,
not like a
babies
baby.
have short arms and legs.
And they're like kind of chubby, and they're like big and thick. No, it was like if you take a human and you shrink it down. You know, I mean, that's what it looked like to me.
Interesting.
Yeah. So.
And the handprints that I saw on the screen were proportional to like a normal human's hand, but just miniature.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Cool. Okay.
And bigger than I've seen. You know, a lot of people would say maybe it was a raccoon, because raccoons have very similar hands to ours. They were bigger than a raccoon.
And there was no claw-like marks at all.
Raccoons have dainty little fingers, though. They have very thin fingers.
Yeah, it wasn't like that.
No, it wasn't.
It was like a hand. It was like a hand, but half the size. You know,
like the size of your palm, basically.
Huh?
Yes.
Yeah, about like
small.
that big.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, it really had an effect on me.
I want to hear what rituals you did in order to summon the little people, because I want to try that myself. I won't regret it when they come.
We would just, I mean, we sang a lot of little songs to them, and it was just like, we're kids, you know. I mean, we made up stuff off the top of our head, and what we did a lot, what you could do is we left food for them a lot, and there have been cultures throughout different places in the world who have said if you leave food out, like, because you know, I grew up reading Lord of the Rings and shit, you know. I was like, I liked Celtic stuff. I think I always had an affinity for the tribal peoples of Europe, because we're you know, tribal peoples of America, Native Americans, and we're being pushed upon this European state of mind. So I naturally gravitated toward what I saw of myself in that. So I thought Celtic people were really cool, and their ideas about the fairies and the little people, they would always leave food and milk and things to appease their fairies and little people, and we were kind of doing stuff like that.
Did you leave it on the outside or inside of your house with the open window?
I would leave them on the windowsill, and then also we would take chocolates, and we would take wind chimes. We'd take all kinds of toys, stuff, down to this one tree that we went to regularly. This special tree on our property that we would go down by the woods and leave that stuff for them, and be really purposeful about it. You know, let them know that's what you're doing. If you want to do it. You know, and honestly, to tell you the truth, you know, I was when I woke up, this thing was looking at me. I could tell it was kind of leaning in, looking at me, and I didn't necessarily feel like it was malevolent per se, but it scared the hell out of me. Well, it's been great talking with you. I'm gonna.
Good talking to you guys too.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And.
Yep. I apologize for the cutoff of the video. The internet connection was really horrible, and it just got progressively worse. So I just cut to the end of the story, and then after that it was pretty much garbage quality the whole time to the very end, which was a good buy because I didn't want to look like I just cut him off like a jerk. What I found interesting was how people are incapable of handling seeing something that defies logic or defies our understanding, and it makes people have mental problems. It just shows how difficult it is for people to accept seeing something like this, and I can understand why so many people who see it don't want to come forward.